Hello everyone, I'm Daryl Pritchard, and I'm here to talk to you tonight about a problem I have seen in my astrophotography imaging sessions with the ZWO ASIAir Pro imaging controller, where the ASIair is creating, or ASIAir Pro, AAP, is creating display images that are stale, not displaying the most currently captured image from the camera that is transferred to the device. Now, in my case, the camera in question, and it may be the nature of the camera, is a Nikon D850 DSLR. This nature of the camera I refer to is it's a non-astro camera. Unlike the family of products that ZWO makes, inclusive of cameras, autofocusers, what have you, the ASIAir Pro is designed really toward that family of products, but nonetheless, ZWO does provide a list of cameras tested as compatible with the ASIAir Pro that are DSLRs, and I think also some of the mirrorless cameras. Whenever I got into astrophotography a year ago, one of the things that excited me about it was how much easier the ASIAir Pro made the whole imaging session by way of how it can control so much for you. Now, I was only using a star tracker, so really the capabilities could not even be exercised that completely for the ASIAir Pro. But in the last couple months, I have moved into a full-fledged equatorial mount, the Ioptron CEM40. But in the process of now being able to more completely exercise the ASIAir Pro's capabilities, I'm also learning some of its problems that I've not seen anyone else speak of. And this actually raises one question in my mind. First off, I'm inclined to believe this problem is unique to non-astro cameras. The reason being is that DSLRs, other cameras in general, are going to be connected to the ASIAir Pro via a USB connection. And you have the option in the ASIair app to select that the camera still save its images to the camera's memory card, or you can forego that and just let the ASIair capture the image off of the camera and save it down as a FIT format file to a micro SD card or other USB storage device that you've mounted externally to the ASIAir Pro. I always use the raw images that my Nikon D850 creates, so I do want those saved to the memory card on the camera, and as such then I have that option selected in the ASIair app. Now, I've had some people ask me when I've discussed this problem in the past with them, why do I even care about FITS files? FITS files being the format that the ASIair creates as the USB stored copies of your camera image. And it's not because I'm using the FITS files for post-processing. It's that they provide me a troubleshooting tool to figure out, what is this problem I'm experiencing? Why is it occurring? And does it give me any insight into what that problem is that I can share with others, share with ZWO, etc., to try and get some resolution of the problem. And it may well be that this problem I've come across might even exist with astro cameras. But the thing there is, when you're using an astro camera as your main camera, you don't have a secondary main camera source to give you a second set of images and compare to your main camera's images. So people using astro cameras, all they really have to deal with are the FITS files, and they have to assume that every image is a correct image. Now, what I have seen is it very commonly has occurred for me during the preview mode image captures, but here recently I actually saw it a bit after the fact. I had done a imaging session last week on the Witch Head Nebula, where I had the Witch Head Nebula up here kind of upper right of the image, and the lower left was Rigel, the star Rigel, pretty much giving me a full frame composition for my D850. And everything looked good. I started the imaging session. I had a good long night of clear sky ahead of me for 9 hours, I think. So I had roughly 4.5 hours before a meridian flip occurred to get a good amount of data. But I was doing moderately long exposures, 4 or 5 minutes each. So even across 4 hours at 5 minutes, that would be about 60 images, I think. And continuing then, post meridian flip, I had about another 60 images I could capture, another 4 hours worth of work. So having seen problems in the past, one thing I do try to do when I know a meridian flip is coming up is go out and check the camera, be sure everything still looks good after the flip, that I've still got the framing I was aiming for, and then allowing the auto run sequence to continue to progress. And in this particular case, I go out and I check the camera, and it did look like the framing was still what I had intended. So I let the session progress, but after I finished and I pulled the images off the card, I did not have Witchhead Rigel. I had Cursa, the star Cursa, somewhere in the viewfinder or in the image, and probably some portion of the Witchhead Nebula. But of course, at that point in time now, I was just looking at my images on the computer, and I had no annotation as the ASIAir provides us so conveniently. So all I can tell you is, in the original image where I had Witchhead Nebula and Rigel, there was no sign of Cursa. It was somewhere outside that field of view, but yet post-flip, the ASIAir had basically lied to me. It said, hey, here's the image I've got for you post-flip. I've done a successful target auto center, and I'm ready to keep going. When in actuality, that image was stale image data from some prior frame, and what I was actually getting was a full frame view with Cursa offset from the center and whatever else. And all of that post-flip 4 hours of data was useless to me. So I've been trying to go through and create a demonstration video of this problem, and I keep getting so long-winded and the video files have run long that I'm trying to do one more shot at shrinking things down. Of course, it also didn't help that the last effort I failed to turn on my microphone, so I had nothing but a silent movie. So what we're looking at, you see that I've got my tablet. I'm going with all this, the same hardware I would use outside. So I've got a web camera set up to capture my A7 Lite Samsung tablet. I do use Android products, but I believe this would be true of iPhones and iPads as well, and also even Android emulations in BlueStacks if you're doing that for monitoring your ASIAir app off of a laptop or home computer, what have you. But anyway, I've got the A7 Lite. I have done a fresh power cycle of the ASIAir. Another thing I do is for the app itself, I'll go in and select App Info. Scroll down to where we've got the storage option to choose from. And we've got 153 megabytes of used cache. So I clear the cache, return, and then go ahead and launch the app. I don't know what clearing the cache does for me, but it's just, again, it's a way for me to really kind of establish a known reference, a known reference point for what I'm doing. Now, we don't see it at the moment. Okay, on my Nikon D850, you can see I've got the screen open, the back view for the live view, and you can't quite make it out. Let's see if I can zoom in here. It's not really important, really, but we have a pattern of LED, of laser dots being projected from a laser pointer here that I've got strapped below my Zenith Star lens, and that is shooting out to my kitchen where I have a white piece of foam core as a target and giving me sort of a mock star setup. And by virtue of a pattern collar on this laser pointer, I can very easily change these patterns. So what that allows me to do is very easily create different subjects from one frame to the next. And in the event that we see a change of the frame patterns, but yet in viewing the content on the screen of the tablet, we see the same pattern across two consecutive images, that will be the problem I'm talking about. So I've seen it occur in two places, both in preview and in auto run. Discussing it with a friend of mine, he asked me a few questions. One, have I tried this in a fits only mode where I'm not capturing or saving images to the camera? And I hadn't, but I did that tonight and I found no difference. Now for me, that would be what I expect, because whether the camera saves an image to the memory card on the camera or not, still you've got that same image data having to be pulled off the camera, transferred over USB 3 to the ASIAir Pro, and then converted and saved to the USB devices as a FITS file. The other question he asked me, which was a good one, was, hey, what about your battery eliminator that you use on your Nikon? Maybe there's some power issues there affecting things. So he suggested I go ahead and use the normal stock Nikon battery. So that's what we have installed in the camera right now. No battery eliminator. So everything I can do to make sure this is not tainted by anything I could introduce into the picture, I've tried to take care of. Another is the USB cable itself. It's not uncommon. I've seen a lot of people having troubles, in these Astro forums saying, hey, I've got this or that trouble. And it turns out to be a bad cable. So I've got two cables I've used, and both of them have tested out to be working perfectly. So no issues there. So what we're going to do, I've got the, everything is being detected. Well, not yet, the camera's not. So I'm going to switch the camera over to USB 3 control. So we lose live view, and the camera is set to bulb raw only mode. And now it is detected by the ASIAir app. And you'll note too, this is ASIAir version 1.8.1, parentheses 8.83. This is the latest version of firmware, but this problem, as I've seen it, predates that through at least the last prior version, maybe two versions of firmware. So we're going to go ahead and enter into our preview screen. And what, I guess I didn't really explain it, but what you see here, in addition to my camera, to the left of that is the pattern of laser dots that are being projected by the laser pointer. Now in this case, these are actually just off a wall here in my room, but at least it gives you something to visually see changing as I manipulate the laser pointer, since we no longer have our live view to reference. But those patterns are being, as I say, projected on into my kitchen and focused upon by the camera. Then below it we have my tablet, and I've got my camera visible so that likewise, when I'm ready to do a dark, you'll see, yes, I did in fact cover the lens. So we've got two Windows Explorer windows open. I will use those for inspecting the memory cards, and I think that's got everything covered. So let's go ahead and get started. I don't need my mount control panel visible or the guide information. I've got a guide scope connected. I think you saw that a minute ago. There's my mount. It's connected, showing everything talking. My guide is the ZWO ASIAir 120mm-S. So it's connected and running. So we've got everything configured as if we were outside. The only difference being that tracking is not turned on. Let's actually confirm that. I don't want to shift out of position. Yeah, it's disabled. And we are not guiding. We will not be able to do plate solutions, obviously, because we're indoors. But none of that matters. None of that factors into why this fails. So let's hide the little guide window there also. And typically the first thing I would do when I'm setting up is I would choose a test exposure. And I'm going to go for 5 seconds. I believe I've got my camera set at ISO 100. I do. So 5 seconds. Not sure what kind of exposure that's going to give us. Let's find out. I'm going to time when the shutter trips to stop. There we go. I have not found the interval in the auto run to be a factor, but nonetheless, that's why I'm timing this until we see a display. And that's 15 seconds from when the shutter was closed to when it gets displayed on screen. So that 15 seconds, in my mind, would be a minimum interval that I would want for an auto run. We could probably go a few seconds less than that because there's going to be other propagation delays. And of course the shutter time on top of that. One thing I'll point out though is keeping in mind that we're inside here and I've got my tablet, the ASIair, everything right here close together. My Wi-Fi connections are good and strong, so we've got a fast data transfer rate. So that 15 seconds could easily turn into 25 seconds, 30 seconds maybe, if my equipment was outside and I was working remotely from my tablet inside. The Wi-Fi connection being slower transfer rate. But even if that slow transfer rate was somehow affecting the screen display, we still have a high-speed transfer between the camera and the ASIair Pro. So kind of independent of our display, if there's being any stale images created internally, even independent of the display, then I'm not sure why that would be, but it's not because of any intervals required for processing or whatever, because we've got fast data transfer occurring there between the ASIair Pro and the camera by way of a physical wired connection. So very quick transfer of a 50 megabyte file. So, okay, we've captured an image. There's no problem there. We're going to change the pattern. Do another capture. Curiously enough, while I've been trying to make this video, the numerous times I've done it, I've often found that the preview mode seems to be working fine. And why that is, I have no idea. But if we don't see this still image problem, see here we have a good image, so no problem there. We'll change it up again and capture another. So why it is that the preview mode seems to be working for me, and yet I've been more customarily seeing problems arise in auto run, I have no explanation for that. But the important thing there is, once again, I mean, you've pretty much got, I would assume, the same image management within the ASIair going on. It's just that when you're doing auto run, it's also cataloging those into files and into different folders. But another good image. I would assume basically the process of what goes on is the same. So even if we don't see problems here in preview, which so far that's proven to be the case. I'm not sure what that little pop-up message was just then. I may have attempted to interrupt something. Oh, I see. Exposure failed. I did accidentally right-click the mouse, and that might have triggered something on my screen by mistake. So let's try again. So what I was saying was that even if no problem shows up here in preview, but let's say it does in auto run, that basically shows us there is this stale image problem, and it could actually occur almost anywhere in your imaging process. And when and where it occurs kind of defines just how critical that becomes. It could potentially affect a plate solve. I've seen that happen numerous times. It could affect auto centering, which is still a plate solving process. You go to a location, a target centering test exposure is made, an evaluation is made relative to the planned target and your current location as seen by the plate solution, and correction factors are then calculated and sent to the mount to shift it accordingly to center up your target. Well, if you've got a stale image in that process somewhere, you could very easily be performing multiple plate solution comparisons as you adjust the camera's position to the same data. And kind of your errors might start cascading, becoming larger and larger. I have seen cases where the mount has been steered by the ASIAir Pro to a very different position. I mean, we could be aimed toward the sky basically, and I've seen it repositioned toward the ground. And that extreme should not even be allowed by the ASIAir. It should have boundaries for target auto centering and corrections that keep it from wandering too far outside of what would be a reasonable field of view about your planned target, so that you're not risking things like having the mount stall out because it's being commanded beyond a normal extreme for the targeting situation at hand. So to that end, I would actually like to encourage ZWO to put in some boundaries on target auto centering, such as maybe plus or minus 1 degree of the target and plus or minus a couple minutes of the target at most. That's going to give you quite a good coverage of any error in alignment without being so gross an error that it drives you toward the ground or a potential mount stall or whatever. So, being that we see that the preview mode is working, let's go ahead and move forward into auto run. And it looks like 5-second exposures are working pretty well there in terms of giving some good clear data. So I believe that's what I've already got in my auto run. No, it's not. Okay. Oh, that's true. I had to re-image my SD card tonight because I had a issue. So it's actually showing us old data. So what we're going to do is set up the lights for okay, we're going to do 5 subs of 5 seconds. And that's done. We're likewise going to do some biases. Or well, we'll do darks first. I'm using a mouse with my tablets. It's a little bit sluggish operation, it seems. And again, we'll just do 5 darks of 5 seconds length. And then finally, how long we do biases for, I would usually be doing 1/8,000th of a second, but I'm not too concerned about that. Let's just make it 1/1000th. Again, it's not relevant to what we're doing. We just need something representative of a bias capture. And we'll do 5 of those. And we measured a 15-second interval for loading of the image, so I'm going to play it safe. I'm just going to put in 15 seconds. I'm pretty sure that well, we'll make it 16 just to give it a 1 second margin of error. I really don't believe it matters from what I've seen. And what that gives us is a 4-minute, 40-second auto run sequence. So we will get that started off with a change of pattern. If you note what we're seeing right now, I'm going to go with a little bit denser star pattern. Let's see. That's probably pretty good. And I'm going to time this from the start. So we've actually got a 5-second delay initially. There's the trigger. And what I'm going to do is after the 5th frame is captured, I will move directly to capping the lens for the darks. So the counter has ticked off 1 image. And that image has loaded, and it loaded correctly in 25 seconds. Let me change the image. This one will be blurred because I was slow on the gun, but we just want it different. We don't care what it is. There's a count of 2. And there is a failure. So there's a 3rd image. I was just constantly slewing the pattern generator. So again, that's going to give some, wiggles or whatever, something irregular. Let's see if that updates. And it does. And this is another thing I have seen fairly commonly. I will get pairs of duplicate images. And that's really strange. Let me go ahead and change the pattern now for this. This pattern will not be repeated because that was just while I was hand holding it. So let's see what we get. Same image, stale. And this last image, the 5th one, I can almost guarantee you will be valid. So I'm capping the lens. So we've got our 5th image registered. Now we're waiting for it to transfer, and then it will press on into the darks. And sure enough, you can see there a distinctly different image. So, like I said, I've seen that before when I've done some comparisons. And I've actually notified ZWO of this already in their BBS forum. It's just really strange. You get consecutive pairs of repeating images. So if one of those, well, obviously one of those is stale and it's replacing a perfectly good, valid light. But what if that particular image shows up when I go out and check things for my meridian flip? Maybe I look at that and I think I've got a good image when the reality is after a flip occurred and centering was done, we've got some subsequent image actually recorded that had it been presented correctly on the screen, I would go, oh, I've got bad framing, and I could correct that and be set to continue for the night. But instead, because these images are stale and reused, sometimes I've seen a series of all the same. I've seen a series of, I don't know what. it's a problem. Believe me, it's a problem. And now that we've got the lens capped, where are our darks? Another peculiarity on this is it does seem like I am observing that when we transition through our image types as defined by how we set the auto run sequence, it's on those transitions into a new type of image that we might see things change or get corrected. Now we've got a different pattern, but again, we've got a capped lens. This pattern is physically impossible to be achieving right now as a correct image from the camera. So we're definitely having failures. And now with the next image, we are moving into our biases. So there's the 11th frame triggered. And it will be, like I say, so this is a transition from dark to bias. It'll be interesting to see if we get a clean, uniform noise image as a dark or bias might be. And we do. So, you know, ZWO's got something to figure out here. You know, what are they doing on these image type transitions that causes it to kind of self-correct and give you the right image? Now here, I'm going to, let's see, we are one image in, two images in. I'm going to go ahead and take off the lens cap in the midst of an exposure there. So this should clearly introduce some garbage into the image. And we'll see, are we now getting stale bias images, or will they be updated correctly? And it looks like we've got our answer. It wasn't updated. That one was still refreshing. So, you know, it's maddening. It just drives me crazy trying to figure out what's going on. But I'm glad I'm at least getting fairly consistent results here for this video that very clearly, you know, illustrate the problem. So we've now finished our 15 frames. And let's go ahead and pull our image cards. So, let's see, did I select? I can't remember if I chose my USB stick or not. Yes, I did. Good. So I'll pull the USB stick and the memory card. And this is going to show us what we already know from visual observations, that the DSLR captures exactly what it sees and does so correctly. But we are lied to by the ASIAir as to what those images are. If I can get my USB stick to plug in to my computer. There we go. Okay, so from these two Explorer views, let's open the, oops, I keep doing this. I keep trying to work on my Explorer view within my screen capture software. Let's open the Samsung USB stick and browse to ASIAir. Preview, we did not do any preview saves, so that's good. There's our auto run and our light with an old date. I failed to pay attention to that, so back in the day when I was trying to do the Pac-Man Nebula. And then on our XQD card from the D850, there we've got our 15 images. And just to kind of help us relate them a little more easily, I'm going to create 3 folders here real quick. Lights, darks, and biases. And first we'll be sure that our files are in ascending time order. So we know that the first 5, 3, 4, 5 are our lights. Our last 5 are the biases. And the remaining center 5 are the darks. So we'll look at the lights as thumbnails. And now for our Samsung stick in the lights here, let's be sure these are in order. Actually, you can tell by their file name, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they are indeed in order. And I'm going to sort those by type just to be a little more convenient. And since the fit file cannot be, is not thumbnailed directly, that's why the JPEGs are provided. So we will, whoops, wrong thing. We'll select the view mode for extra large icons. And compare them side by side. Let me shrink these windows a bit to make things a little easier to look at in direct comparison to one another. I guess there's a slight difference in the thumbnail sizes. So our first fit file, we can see a pattern there of what, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 stars, and the same image is the first of our raw files. But now you'll notice the second image of the raw files, we've got a similar image, because I was a little bit slow there on changing my pattern, but that center star, as I'll call it, looks a little larger. Let me, let's see if I can enlarge these windows. Yeah, that'll help. Move myself over. This will make it easier just to look at the thumbnails. So our second raw file is pretty distinctly different from our second NEF file, from our second fit file, which just so happens to look identical to the first. So the first and second fit files are duplicates. Thus, your second image is not a correct and accurate presentation of what was actually captured by the camera. We go on to the third fit file, and if you just look at the next file in sequence, then that does match up. But in reality, what is the, well, no, that's okay. So what is the third fit file is correctly the third raw file. What is shown as the fourth fit file is once again a duplicate of the third that does not, and that fourth file does not match our fourth raw. And then finally we have our last image, which does not match up at all either. So folks, that could not be any more obvious that there are problems going on there. And as I mentioned there at the start, if you don't have another camera source of images to give comparisons to, and you only had your fits files off of an Astro camera, it may be that it's doing the same kind of thing. Now, if you're going through, using Pi or whatever, if you're blinking through your images to review them, you might notice you've got some duplicates in there, but you might also think, well, that just wasn't much of a shift, and it looks like it's probably the same image, but it probably isn't. And yet, In fact, it might very well be. If you questioned, are these two files identical? Let's just do this. What am I trying to do here? I'm working on the wrong screen again. What I'm going to do, two files there. Let me get this path name. And I'm going to open a command shell, which will not be in my screen window. So let me turn on a screen for that. Okay. So for a moment here, we're just going to look at this command window, and we want to go to the iDrive. That is my Samsung stick. And then change to the path where our fits files are. And let me just see if I can list these out here. So we're going to compare the first fit file in a binary mode. Let's see if I can do this. No, I'll do it another way here. So we're comparing the first two fit files in a binary mode. And that's all we get as the difference in output. There are, what, 3, 6, 9, about 15 lines or so that differ in some form or fashion. Now, I don't know what those addresses are. My guess is that this may be just some basic header information. But let me show you now by comparison the third file. Move this out of the way once again. So this third file, it looks a little similar, but it's got enough disturbance in it to distinguish it. What you're going to see when we compare the second and third files together is a huge difference. So file number 2.fit to 3.fit. Many differences. We'll just abort that and close our window. So that's how I go about analyzing the files, and that's how I know that it's not that the first and second fit file look similar, but might be just a little different because they've only barely shifted in the tracking. It's that they are the same file. A little bit of difference there in the header that I don't really understand. And it may even be that maybe that's I don't know if that could be like a creation date or what. I have seen cases where there were 0 differences. So I'm kind of I'm going overboard and even talking about that. But I share it just for those who are stubborn enough to go try and investigate their problems sort of in a similar fashion as I did. Now let's go ahead and look at our other files. We've got the darks. Thumbnails for each. Once again, let me sort by file type. and they're in numerical order. And very clearly we see all 5 of our darks show the content as if they were lights. Our 5 raw files are blank, they're black. So another extremely clear and obvious problem. Finally, we go to our biases. And those all look good. They're all uniform noise images, consistent with what a dark or bias would look like, and exaggerated by the fits, format thumbnail, whereas for the raw images they all appear black. So I think that pretty well covers it. I actually managed to go through that a little bit quicker than I have in the past. So yay for me on that. And I hope this is information that ZWO is able to take advantage of and find out, what's going wrong. It would be nice in a way. I mean, being that I'm not one who is using an astro camera yet, I'd feel it'd be rewarding to know that I found a problem through the use of my DSLR that actually applies to the astro cameras as well. But just by virtue of not having, again, those 2 image sets to compare, you just don't know. You have to just assume what you get from the astro camera is correct, and that your subsequent review process, if you do any of all of your subs, that any duplicates you see are not an issue, or you can discard them or whatever. But thank you for your time and your attention on this video. If you have any comments, by all means, I welcome them. If you have any ideas about what, if anything, I seem to be doing wrong, I'm fair game. Throw out anything you want to at me. I mean, if I'm wrong about something, I want to know. I wish you clear nights and dark skies, or dark nights and clear skies, or both, or whatever. If you've seen problems like this, but you've never thought to explore it by way of FITS files, if you've been working with a non-astro camera, I'd love to know that you went and explored this a little bit in this same direction as I have, and seen similar observations where you could unquestionably say, yes, this fit file equals something totally wrong from what is correctly represented by my camera file. And if so, then that's just more fuel for the fire to hopefully help ZWO find an answer to this, so that we're not all thrust into having to buy astro cameras just yet. Some of us are new to this hobby, and it's not a cheap one. So the longer I can get away with using my DSLR and get images I'm happy with, the more I can consider, when I want to go for something nicer. I know a 6200 MC ZWO camera is, high on my wish list. I'm spoiled by full frame, and I like to have a resolution level such that if I get some photos I'm proud of, then I've got a good high resolution image to work with for printing at nice image sizes. But still, that's a pricey camera to get, and it's color. I may have to consider mono one day as well. That seems to be the recommendation for the optimum photographs. But anyway, for now, I'm going to make do with my D850, my Zenith Star, and my ASIAir Pro that I hope we can find a fix for. Again, thank you for your time and attention. Good night.